What's going on, everybody? My name is Ben and welcome back to another episode of Ben Builds with Joe. This is episode number 8, and of course we're back on the A6M3 Hamp. This thing is looking beautiful. I love how the paint's turned out. I've airbrushed all those markings on there, and really honestly I'm going to go ahead and leave it in this color. Originally I was going to airbrush over this with some JN green. I've decided to go ahead and do one of these. Probably the second version because it's got that really cool blue slash going down the fuselage. It's got some yellow bands across the tail. So this is the one we're going to be working with. I like my paint job. I don't want to mess it up, so we're going to leave it and move on from there. Now the nice thing about that is that we don't have to paint anything more on the aircraft. I've been looking through my Offspring modeling book, and nowhere in here does it say that I need to go ahead and paint on the yellow identification bands on the front of the wings. That, I guess, came in later in the war, so we're going to forego that. We're going to go right in to the landing gears. Now, the landing gears themselves require a little bit of a brake cable. And in the instructions, we talk a little bit about how to do that, and I've read about it here in my Offspring modeling book as well, so we have an idea. We're going to go ahead and hollow out all these little areas and string a brake cable through. Now, to do that, we're going to be using a pin vise, and I've got my wheel bay covers right here. I've already drilled out one side, and as you can see, there's a hole that goes right down through each one of these supports. That is actually very cool, very simple to do. So now we have to go ahead and drill out the other side. To do that, we're just going to go bit by bit, section by section, and eventually we'll be able to string in some copper wire, and then we should have a really nice looking brake cable. So let's go ahead and cue up that time lapse. Real quick, we're going to go ahead and drill out all the supports here on the landing gear bay cover, and we'll see where we go from here. So let's get this done. All right, everybody, it's looking pretty sweet. So there's one little area right here. We can go ahead and take our X-Acto knife, and we're just going to kind of shave this raised detail off because that's where we're going to go ahead and put and glue in that brake cable. So just going to use my X-Acto knife and just very, very carefully slice off that little bit of a raised detail, and then we should be able to drill a hole in there. We can bend the wire and just fish it right into that hole, glue it down, and we should have a brake cable both attached to the hub, right up the landing gear and up into the top of the wheel well. So that should be pretty decent to do. Now let's go ahead and drill out right here a little bit of a hole so that we have some place to go ahead and bend the wire and glue the wire in. And we should be ready to go ahead and try to string some of the copper wire to go ahead and replicate that brake cable. So we're going to use some copper wire. Let's go ahead and feed it here up through the actual landing gear bay cover. And let's see how this works. Going to have to go ahead and use maybe an X-Acto knife, maybe some tweezers to go ahead and fish this through. Make sure that it lines up with all the holes. We'll just press it through the next one. Just a little bit of pressure here, and there we go. Looking pretty good. Might have to pull out the tweezers for this one, but let's see if I can't just kind of finagle it up through that opening. Yeah, not too bad. We're going to leave a little bit of excess here on the top because I don't know how much or how little I will need. So it's best to go with more, and we can just cut off the excess. So let's go ahead and then bend this around to kind of fit in with the landing gear itself, and then we're going to cut that and we're going to bend it at the end and get it right down into that hole that we just drilled out with our X-Acto knife. Now this is looking pretty neat. I like it. Awesome. So that looks really, really sharp. Let's go ahead and install the secondary gear bay door. Now I don't know really why this is here, but there's a little bit of an extra door that kind of hangs off the top of the main gear. So we're just going to glue that in with some super glue, just so it won't knock it off when we're stringing up any of the wires. Now for the landing gear wheel itself, we're going to go ahead and sand this part right here, get it cleaned up. Then we're going to place it on to the landing gear itself. Looks like it fits beautifully right there. And before we go ahead and attach everything together, let's go ahead and slice off that last little part right here. All right, the second landing gear brake line is installed, looking pretty sharp. Let's go ahead and cut off the end here. We'll take our tweezers and we're going to bend this. Make sure to kind of follow the contours of the landing gear itself. I also want to make a 90-degree bend at the very end of this wire so that we can fit it right into that hole that we just drilled out. We can glue it down with a little bit of super glue and we should be looking pretty good. Now, of course, when I fit this up into the wheel wells themselves, I'm going to have to go ahead and cut off the excess wire, but that's okay. Like I said, I don't really know how much wire I'm going to need, so best to have too much. We can just trim it down. So speaking of the landing gear bays, let's go ahead and get these all masked off. We can airbrush those in a really cool metallic blue color. Now, I actually have that color from Gunze, and I think this is going to be a really nice, easy, simple job. We're going to take our hobby knife, we're going to cut out the center here, and then we can just pull up that center. We'll have the mask already down, and we can just airbrush it with that metallic blue color, and it should be, well, pretty much done. So let's go ahead and cue up the time lapse, and hopefully this turns out beautifully, clean and as crisp as possible. So that metallic blue turned out beautifully. I really enjoyed this color. Now you can also make this color yourself by taking some chrome or aluminum and airbrushing an area and then overpainting it with a clear blue. And sometimes you can drop a little bit of clear green on top of that as well, and it should tint it all together. But this, right out of the bottle, it is a beautiful color, and I'm really happy in how it turned out. Didn't have much overspray either, so that also, big win right there. So moving on with our painting, we're going to go ahead and outline the flap area here on the top of the wing. We're going to outline that in red because unfortunately it doesn't come with a decal for it, so we're going to go ahead and have to paint them. So to do that, we're going to lay them out with some tape and we're going to mask them off, pull up that center tape and paint them red. All right, everybody, so we have successfully painted on the red outlines here on the top of the wings for the flaps. And I really honestly have never tried this before. Painting these little tiny red lines, I for sure thought that the decals would be sufficient, but they don't actually have any decals for these lines here in the Tamiya kit, which is weird. I thought that they were going to have something like that. The Hasegawa kit that I just built had some for the roof, but for this, there were none. So we went ahead and opted to paint them ourselves, and I really actually like how this turned out. Just fits together, especially since I painted the markings, it just kind of fits together. I went ahead and installed the landing gears, had to do a little bit of trimming on one of them to make sure that it lined up correctly. We installed the rear tail wheel, and now I'm just going to go ahead and paint up that tire, do a little bit of detail work on that. Honestly, there's not a lot to do really with the kit now. We have most of the parts glued on. We have to do a few touch-ups here and there. Then we have to go ahead and move on to gloss coat and then move on to decal. So we're really pushing forward here, and we're almost done. We're getting super close, guys. And here we are. Everything is on, installed, and dried. We are now ready for a beautiful gloss coat. Now, typically I would use Future, but I've decided to do something a little bit differently. Instead, I'm actually going to be using Gunze Clear. This is something I've had sitting around for a while. It is just basically a clear gloss. We're going to go ahead and airbrush this over the entire model. I've never tried it before, but I really want to give it a shot. This model is kind of a model of a lot of firsts for me, so I want to go ahead and just do another first here and try this Gunze acrylic clear gloss. So in the airbrush it goes, and let's go ahead and see how it sprays. Well, actually, that isn't too bad at all. The gloss worked pretty well. It's not necessarily as thick or as shiny as the Future would have been, but this is actually not too bad. So we'll see how it dries, and we'll see how the decals go on next episode. Until then, everybody, thank you so much for joining us here on Ben Builds with Joe. I know he's already finished his A6M3, but you know what? I'm getting close. Should be a couple more episodes and I'll have it finished up too. So until next time, guys, go out, get yourself some bench time, have some fun. Check out Joe's channel. He's a great builder, an awesome guy. And we will see you all back here next week for another episode of Ben Builds with Joe. Until next week, take care and we'll see you soon.